In those days, any long journey was hazardous, for the world was untamed and wild animals abounded. Also, one might wander accidentally into hostile territory, especially feared much more than the animals were the Lango tribesmen who enjoyed killing and maiming for its own sake. Olo therefore sent 2 of his sons to accompany his sister, for whom his heart constantly bled. Her strength and courage in the face of blow after devastating blow left him full of painful admiration. You, Opio, and you, Odongo, you will accompany your Aunt AKOKO on her journey. If anything happens to her, please don't come back, for I'll hold you responsible. You will go a day before she leaves your cousin Nyabera's house, join up with her there, and travel with her to and from KISUMU. You understand? Of course they understood. When old Olo spoke, it was wisest to understand, and where his sister was concerned, it was mandatory to understand immediately. Yes, father, we understand. We will do as you say. Odongo, the younger twin, was the mouthpiece of the identical duo. Opio, the older twin, was the man of action. They were 20 and not yet married. They made haste to Sakwa to meet their aunt, who was far from delighted to see them. And what, may I ask, are the 2 of you doing this far from home? Have you turned into vagabonds or something? She asked. Began Opio, trying to find his tongue. Actually, father ordered us to come. We are to keep you company on your journey to KISUMU, said Odongo, smiling at his aunt, whom he liked greatly. What? Are you crazy? Or is he? I will have none of it. Go back this instant before I throw something heavy at you. Apart from the fact that we would like to come with you, we cannot go home because your brother has made it quite clear that our lives will be in danger. So throw whatever it is you want to throw and then we will get on with it, replied the unflappable Odongo, smiling even more broadly. Actually, aunt, you know, you need protection, and I promise to keep Odongo quiet so that he doesn't annoy you too much. Opio eventually found his tongue. AKOKO had to laugh at their youthful enthusiasm. Oh, alright. Though I think Olo has gone crazy. I'm an old woman of no consequence to anyone. He really shouldn't have sent you. And you will never grow old. I think you will die young, and you will always be of consequence to everybody back home. At cockcrow the next day, the usual hour for starting a long trek, the 3 started out on their epic trek. It was still very dark, but they walked sure-footed as only those who live in the bush country can. The dewy grass slapped moistly against their swiftly moving legs, and trees and tree stumps rose suddenly out of the darkness, making grotesque shadows out of the great shadow of the night. The trees whispered conspiratorially at each other, and once in a while an owl hooted, or some animal called its mate, or a hyena laughed hysterically in the night. For all their bravado, the young men would have been at least a little afraid, were it not for the calm confidence that AKOKO exuded. When there was a little light and one could reduce one's vigilance a little, AKOKO started to recite the history of the people of Ramogi. This was not just a pastime, but a bounden duty, for the history of the tribe could only be transmitted by mouth from generation to generation. Else, how can you know where you are going unless you know where you are coming from? Therefore, whenever an elder was alone with a young person, he or she always recited the history of the tribe or clan. In the beginning, Were was alone in the world, which was beautiful. Were is a spirit, and a spirit is like a flame. You can only see it, but you cannot get hold of it. It is like air, which you know is there, but which you cannot touch. It is like the wind, which can uproot a tree and hurl it afar, but has no substance. It is like a lightning, which is seen in many places at once, but is in none. Yes, it is like the essence of man, which makes him all that he is, yet departs from him quietly and suddenly leaving only a dead image. Were is a great spirit. He saw that the world needed more than the spirit forms, so he created Ramogi and his brothers, whom were men. Man has a form which is spiritual, where he sent the men he had created to various parts of the world to settle in it. Ramogi he sent to the country around the Great Lake, which was a great favor, for he had more spirit than his brothers. The wife whom Were gave him was called Nyarnam. He embodied the spirit of the Great Lake. They had many children, including Rachuonyo, Sakwa, Asembo, Imbo, Game, Uyoma, Nyakach, Seme, and Ugenya, among others who settled around the lake, tilling land, taming animals, and catching fish. These are the children of Ramogi, from whom we all rise. Of the children of Ramogi, many great brave men have arisen. They are called Thuondi, the brave ones. These men of renown include Luanda Magere. So strong and brave a warrior was he that it is rumored that the sharp spears of Langu warriors could not pierce his skin. Then there was Gor Mahia, the wily one who could change his form into anything at all, thus confounding the enemy. There were many others, great leaders and warriors and women of renown, such as Lela Kabanda, the mighty warrior, Onyango Randar, man of war, Ogutu Kipapi, great warrior, and my direct ancestors, Tawo Kogot, Obondo Mumbo, Orach Rambo, and the woman Nyamgondo of the mighty wealth. There are many others whom we should aspire to imitate. She continued in that vein, with the twins interjecting a question now and again until they reached the borders of Game, where they rested for the night. They started out again from Game through Asembo and Seme, and on the sixth day they were in the outskirts of the market of KISUMU. There they saw what they thought was a white man. His hair was straight and black, and his skin was nut brown. He was sitting inside a tin structure within which were rows and rows of strange-looking items. "He is not very white, is he?" asked Odongo. "No, he's not," replied Opio. "Our cousin Alando is much lighter than he is." "Why do you think they call them white men then?" "I don't know." The man in question was an Asian. AKOKO summoned a passerby. "Greetings. May the day be light. May the day be full of light. We are strangers all the way from Savannah country of Sakwa. Welcome, strangers. What is your destination?" "We are going to look for the big chief of the Sirkal in the market of KISUMU." "Oh." He noticed that she was dressed in the traditional skin called chieno, and the young men in skins covering only their loins. They both had spears and shields. He himself was in a pair of long shorts and a singlet, the height of civilized fashion. He had also gone to a mission school for 1 year, so he was an educated man. The year was 1930, according to the white men who kept such a close track of seasons. Enlightened he might be, but he was still African enough to accord hospitality on demand. They were evidently primitives straight out of the bush. "Oh, I see. But we no longer call the place KISUMU. The Sirkal has changed that to KISUMU. Also, the big white chief is called Adio." "Adio?" asked mesmerized Odongo. "Yes, just about that, my young friend," replied the man condescendingly. "He rules with the help of a tribunal of elders. Mother, why don't you and your sons come to my house? Then I will take you to see the D.O. tomorrow. I work there, but today is a Sunday, the day of rest, so the D.O. is not working." They followed him silently, quite overwhelmed by events. What could one say faced with a chief called D.O., which means squeeze? What might he want to squeeze? Their brains? So they followed the man quietly until they reached his house, which was Thankwere, a round mud hut with a thatched roof. It, however, had square windows made of wood and a neat wooden door, all painted bright green. Evidently, here was a man who was really with it. His wife fed them, made them comfortable, and finally provided them with papyrus pallets to sleep on. They rose early the next day, for it was still a long trek to the center of the town. As they walked, the buildings grew larger and odd-looking. Most had white walls and red roofs, others had tin walls and rusted roofs. Some were traditional. There were many people milling about in the streets, some of which were paved with small stones. Their host had advised them to leave their weapons at home. Nobody is allowed to carry weapons anymore. Why is that so? Asked Opio, who felt lost without the weight of a spear in his hand. Because the Sirkal has askaris now to protect everyone and keep the peace. And what is whatever you call them? Asked Odongo. He whose tongue was so swift did not take kindly to words around which it couldn't get. Oh, the bottom pit of ignorance, thought the man to himself. Askaris are men who are armed and given authority to arrest anyone who breaks the law. They wear special clothes so that everybody can tell them apart from the rest of the people. Eventually, they reached the district officer's office and were stopped by 2 Askaris at the gate. What business have these people with the DO? Asked one of them briskly. They have a complaint to lodge with the tribunal. It is a very serious matter involving a chief, so they have a right to see the DO. Their host must have been sent by Were himself to smooth the way. How else could they have managed, handicapped as they were with their lack of words? They were eventually let in, and their host led them to the clerk who filed their case for the tribunal. Now, if their host was with it, this clerk was quite beyond it. He wore a dazzling white shirt, a thin black tie, and khaki shorts. On his feet were brilliant white shoes. His hair was parted sharply down the middle, almost as if he had used a geometrical instrument to do it. Stuck in his hair were several pencils and pens. He was a creature completely beyond comprehension, although his skin was black and the words from his mouth recognizable. Later, they would learn that he was an erudite man with 4 years of white man's education behind him. He could speak the language of the white man as well as his own, and was therefore an interpreter, an ego-boosting job, for he held both sides in his power. After he had lodged the general nature of their case, they were told to return in 3 days.